I would like, okay, so first of all, I would like to introduce myself. So I am Alia, I'm a pharmacy faculty, and I'll be your moderator for this Power Talk. So this Power Talk is part of our commitment to enrich our learning experience. So I3L has been regularly conducting the I3L Power Talk series. And the series of talks give a unique opportunity for you and for the stakeholders to actively engage in discussions with national and international experts on topics related to education, research, science, and business. So for today, in our I3L Power Talk, we are delighted to invite Risman Abu Dairi as a speaker to enlighten our students and all of you regarding the subject of the drug regulation ecosystem, the challenges and the opportunities for Indonesia. So we believe his expertise on the topic will inspire you as our future generation. So before we start, I would like to share the agenda for today's talk and the code of conduct. So this is the agenda for today's Power Talk. So the first one, we will have an opening and forwards from our head of department from Pharmacy Study Program. And then we will have a presentation from our speaker. And then we will continue with a Q&A, and then we will end this Power Talk at 4 p.m. And next, so this is the code of conduct of this Power Talk. So attendees are prohibited to activate audio during the Power Talk session. And then attendees are allowed to use chat feature to ask questions. So later on, if you want to ask anything, please drop your questions in the chat icon below. And the evaluation surveys will be distributed in the end of the Power Talk. And this survey is also used to record your presence. So we will not distribute any presence in any form, but we will use the survey to record your presence. Okay, so before we start, I would like to invite Ms. Pitra Dewi Hartianti for her forward. So for Ms. Pitra, the time is yours.
Thank you, Alia. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, Miss.
Okay. First of all, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to Mr. Risman from AstraZeneca for his willingness to participate in this learning process for not only students, but also faculties and external parties. Mr. Risman, thank you very much for your willingness to share your experience, your expertise, and also your knowledge to us. I believe it will be a very good insight to not only the students and the external parties, but also to I3L faculties. And hopefully this will help us to connect more with what is going on in the industries and to relate more to our teachings. And also we hope that the students will be able to get a better idea and visualization of how things are being done in the industry and what are the challenges that we're currently facing in the area of drug innovation and regulation ecosystem. Probably that will be my short forward. Again, thank you very much once again to Mr. Risman. Thank you for Ms. Alia for arranging this event. And I would like to thank the participants as well. And hopefully you'll get positive and good insights from this event. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully you will be enjoying this Power Talk and get good insights from it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Pitra, for your forward. So next, please welcome our honored speaker, Risman Abu Dairi. And before we start, so I will introduce him a little bit. So Risman has over 18 years of experience in a multinational pharmaceutical industry and leading AstraZeneca vaccine rollout in Indonesia along with the Indonesian government. So he is now the Director of Market Access, Government and Regulatory Affairs of AstraZeneca. And he has been an interim President Director of AstraZeneca Indonesia in 2017 to 2018. And he also has been the Director of Operations and Management of AstraZeneca from 2014 to 2017 and Plant Director of AstraZeneca from 2002 until 2014. And Sir Risman completed his education from Bandung Institute of Technology and he obtained the Bachelor of Pharmacy degree. So without further ado, so let's greet our speaker. So Pak Risman.
Hi,
Hello,
Alia.
Pak.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sure, Pak. Are you good, Pak?
Yeah,
How are
I'm
you
okay.
doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
Good.
so as always, yeah. Okay, thank
Welcome
you
to
very much.
I3L,
Yeah.
Pak.
Yeah. Okay, maybe the picture is not quite so good, yeah. So, but is the picture not good, yeah? So maybe I need to change my.
It's okay, Pak. We can see you and hear you clearly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alia. Thank you very much, Ibu Pitra, yeah, to join me in this meeting. So it has been an honor, yeah, to just share my experience, and also sharing around what is happening now in the pharmaceutical sectors, also what we can do together. So that's actually the most important thing, yeah, what we can do together to really drive this forward in pharmaceutical sectors. So if I may just share my slide, yeah. So actually I have been, so hopefully that all of us here are able to read Indonesian, yeah, because actually my slide is a bit mixed up, yeah, between English, Indonesia, etc. and so on. Okay, can you see my slide there?
Yes, Pak.
Yeah, I just took the slide here and there. That's why some of the slides are constructed in the English language, but some of them are basically use the original language in Indonesia, but it should be okay. Okay, so some slides as well that I think that it is quite confidential. Then I will stop sharing when I just talking through the slides, so that all of us feel comfortable with that. So that's actually one thing that I need to share with you. So maybe another thing that I would like to share with all of you is that I'm speaking here. It's not representing AstraZeneca. I know that I've been serving really long years, yeah, with AstraZeneca, but I'm talking on behalf of myself, and the slide are actually constructed and also developed by myself as well. So hopefully that you are okay with that. So I will, I will look forward to have a healthy discussion as well by the end of this slide. So how long do I have to present, Alia?
Until 3:30, Pak. So around 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then we will continue with the discussion.
Okay, thank you. So this is actually my favorite topics, yeah, around the innovations and also regulations ecosystem. That's actually my favorite topic. Also my favorite topic as well around challenges and opportunity, because wherever I see challenges, there will be opportunities behind. So that's what I believe so far over the last 18 years or maybe 20 years, yeah, 20 years in my career. So actually AstraZeneca is my fourth company that I'm working for. Okay, moving on. I hope that there is no media publications, yeah, no screenshot and also sharing. That's what I hope. Yeah, and also I would hope as well that we keep in this meeting. This is a closed meeting, and this is for educational purposes. It is not for commercial purposes. So some of the slides are actually consisting of some a bit sensitive or confidential data, but it should be okay because I'm invited by the educational, education's university or institute that actually it is, making me a bit on how to talk around that. So what the slide and also my presentation is going to be constructed, I will take you through around the two things. The first element is around market. The second element around research and development in pharma sectors. Why it is important? It is important because market without R&D is not going to be growing. R&D without market is not going to be sustainable. So it is really important to connect between market and R&D. So it is important as well to connect between global market and R&D and Indonesia market and R&D. So before we talk around the Indonesia, better to have same knowledge around how the global pharma is moving, because actually Indonesia is a part of the global. That's why, and to be honest, right now, pandemic, giving us a lot of learnings. Actually, Indonesia is basically, it's not the isolated country. Indonesia is a part of the global. When we are suffering, global also suffering. When we are, able to control the pandemic, also global also controlling the pandemic, and other way around. So we are part of the global. So before we see around what is happening in Indonesia, I think we need to understand about what is happening in the global market. So just, I will take you through first around the market or business in the pharma in the global level. So I just would like to give you some understanding around what the global pharma business is looking like around the size. Yeah, so if you can see here that actually the global pharma business, the size is huge, 18,000 trillion per year. So this is actually the numbers actually in US dollar, but I'm converting into rupiah so that we have same understanding around it. Because when I was firstly graduated from my university, I think 20 years ago, when people talking about the business size, I was the person who doesn't understand what they are talking about, because I cannot imagine how big they are in the US dollar. So that's why I'm trying to give you some quick sense around how big it is. It is really big. 18,000 trillion is really big. I just give you one understanding and one information as well, that actually the APBN, the government budget right now every year is 2,700 trillion. So you can imagine how big the pharma business is in the global level. And as we expected, actually from 18,000 trillion, the market are dominated in US and Canada. Almost 50% from 18,000 trillion are actually located and spent in US and Canada. Yeah, and actually the major market, they are actually consuming a lot of products, a lot of the spending in the pharma sectors are Europe, and Japan. This is also traditional market as well, where actually they are consuming quite a lot of portions of the global pharma market. US, Europe, Japan. Yeah, so, and in Asia, just recently, Asia is growing really well, driven by China, of course. Yeah, but you can see here, right now we are catching up to Europe. And if you look at to the future outlook here around the pharma business, that's actually 17 to 2022, but we can make the further projections, and the number is more or less same. Where actually the pharma sectors is considered healthy. Yeah, so it is growing by CAGR 5 years ahead, growing by 6.5%. That's considered really good, from the big number, because it is from big number anyway. And why it is happening? Because it is driven by the new products in oncology and also in orphan drug in particular. And of course, it is driven by the new products discovered as well globally, worldwide. So you can see there that actually that's why the company who are actually dominating the share of the market is basically the companies who are doing the strong research and development. Yeah, this is actually the companies that we know exactly, for example, like Novartis, Pfizer, Roche, AstraZeneca, etc., and so on. They are right now having very good market share, because they are continuously discovering new products in the space where actually, in the space of therapeutic area where it is actually growing. Yeah, I just would like to take you around the Indonesia after we talk around global, to just give something like the sense, or flavor around what the Indonesian pharma business looking like. Indonesia business right now is around 70 to 80 trillion per year. So you can see there the gap is really huge between Indonesia and the global pharma business. Yeah, Indonesia, if I just calculate roughly, not more than 0.5%. The share of Indonesia pharma business, not more than 0.5% of the total global pharma business. That's actually, if you look at from the size itself, it's quite challenging. But to be honest, as I mentioned, that behind the challenges always been an opportunity. So then, if we look at also from unit perspective, yeah, in 2009, so we can see here as well. The important here is that sometimes when we discuss around the pharma business value, we think that actually, in Indonesia, because the population is so big, and then the question is why the business size quite small? Or because the markets are actually dominated by generic, which offer low price. That's actually not quite. If you look at the data later on, that's not quite right hypothesis, to be honest, because actually in terms of the volume as well, it is also growing a bit low single digit here from year to year. So why that's happening, we can talk later. Okay, maybe this is a bit confidential. I will stop sharing. So globally, over the last 25 years, basically, the spending of the medicines has been changing from the therapeutic drugs point of view. In the past, it was dominated by the quite primary products, for example, like diabetes or the cardiovascular, neurology, etc., and so on. But you can see in the data that I'm having now, nowadays actually the spending is dominated by the new therapeutic area, which is oncology, immunology, something like that. So, and also the other rare and also the orphan diseases, because actually the pharma companies are seeing this as unmet medical needs. Yeah, so the pharma companies continuously driving discover these products in this space, in this area, so that it is, from market perspective, it is increasing so well in this area globally. Yeah, so in my next slide is basically also telling us around the future. Yeah, what therapeutic areas are really growing going forward, and we can see here that actually it is still dominating by oncology and immunology. That's actually the therapeutics area where actually the multinational pharmaceuticals company are right now really keen, yeah, to play in this therapeutic area. Okay, so next slide is basically, I can share again the next slide. Just a minute. Sorry, a bit hassle here. So Alia, can you see my slide now?
Yes, Pak.
Okay, so one of the business drivers globally is basically the new products discovery, or quite often that it is called the new chemical entity or biological entity. So every year, the products, the new molecules that are discovered globally is around 50 to 60 now. Yeah, but it keeps increasing from year to year because actually the productivity of R&D is keep increasing. So in another data that I have, basically right now, the biologic products are getting more and more important. And today, Actually, over the last 5 years, the biologic products are actually having the share around the number of the new molecule entities around 35%. So going forward, we believe that the biologic products is going to be bigger and bigger, so that the biologic products actually the technology that Indonesia need to have capability on. Yeah, and it is different than 20 years ago, where actually the products are discovered and also launched in the developed market like US and also Europe. But nowadays, because actually we are living in the small village, yeah, which is called global village. So everyone can understand, can understand, also having knowledgeable on what is happening in other countries very quickly. So right now, the launch of the new products, both the new chemical entity or biological entity from the US and Europe coming to the emerging market like Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Singapore in particular, that's really fast. Around 1 or 2 years after the product is being launched in the Europe and US, then the product is launched in Asia region, for example, like Singapore in particular. So the new launch of product is really important. Why it is important? Because the new products, one of the requirements of the new products registrations is that these new products must be having, superior or at least, non-inferior, yeah, but must be having, better safety and efficacy profile than the current standard of care. That's why new product is really important, because people is trying to get the better and better medications, yeah. So that Indonesia need also to catch up, yeah, around launching the new products. But going forward, Indonesia need to be able to discover new products where actually having better from safety and also efficacy point of view. Okay, pharma R&D characteristics. So I just would like also to take you through around the R&D characteristic in pharma, but still in the global level. Yeah, so for the pharmaceutical students or pharmaceutical teachers or stakeholders who are actually attending to this meeting, you need to be really proud, as I am. Yeah, because no industry having R&D spending bigger than pharmaceuticals and biotechnology. Not to mention automobile, technology, hardware, software, whatever it is called, aerospace, whatever it is called. Pharmaceuticals and biotechnology spend bigger than them. So we need to be proud of it. So in rupiahs, actually, if we just convert into the Indonesian rupiahs, the all pharma R&D spending, including the pharmaceutical company, research center, etc., and so on, and basically it is dominating by the pharmaceutical company. We spend we spend around more than 2,000 trillion rupiahs a year. Yeah, to be exact, 2,200 trillion rupiahs a year. I just converted into rupiahs based on our current currency. Yeah, again, if we compare to the Indonesian APBN budget, so again, this spending is really huge, yeah, in the pharma sectors. And also it is still growing. Yeah, and why is that growing really much? Because number one, people is trying to find the new molecules, new treatment, which is better than current standard of care. That's actually the only reason. And also for the multinational companies, I think it is basically becoming the one and only strategy for the multinational company to grow the business and also to drive the business forward. Yeah. So if you look at maybe you have seen this chart quite often, but something that I would like to highlight here. So basically, this is actually the overall end-to-end life cycles of the pharmaceutical products. Yeah, start from drug discovery, screening, etc., and so on. I believe that you are more knowledgeable than myself on this space. Yeah, and after we found the candidate, we do the preclinical trials, and also after the clinical trial success, then we go to the clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Yeah, and then after the phase 3, we got the phase 3 trials. Yeah, then it is going to be collected into the dossier for regulatory approval. Dossier being submitted normally not only in one countries, but the all countries all across the globe. If this product, fit to the all countries. Yeah, so then we are getting approval. So what the message that I'm trying to deliver here is basically number one, the the cost of product discovery in the pharmaceutical is huge. So based on the journal that I got and also I learned, basically cost in average, the cost to discover one molecule is around 2.5 billion US dollar, or it is around 36 trillion rupiahs per molecules. And it will take 10 to 15 years, something that we already understand. But the most important thing that we also understand about this is that from 36 trillion rupiahs spending to discover one new molecules, actually 65% or majority of these costs actually spent for clinical trials. Yeah, so that we can imagine how important it is to run the clinical trials, to have the clinical trials capability in this country. Yeah, to be able to, to be able to attract the investment of that multinational company are always spending every year, because they are right now in race to discover the new products for better healthcare for global populations. Okay, so wow, that's really expensive to find the new products. But you can see here, I just took from one of the white paper that actually 2.5 billion US dollars is huge. But actually, once we discover once the company discover the products, one new molecules, and also it is being launched globally, and it is successfully and also accepted by the healthcare professionals all across the globe, the sale is also really huge as well every year. So you can see here the best product right now, the huge product they are selling, they are being sold in globally is Humira here. That's actually that's based on the data that I have. The sales every year is 16 billion US dollar. You can imagine, yeah. So that's why the multinational company, where actually their daily job is discover the new molecules, are actually they are okay to spend a lot of money to discover new products, because it is paid off once it is found, registered, and also commercially launched globally. Okay, why it is important? Yeah, I got this slide when I worked with Alia at the time. So this is for Indonesia. So it is not only for the drugs, but it is for every industries. Yeah, that actually it is important to accelerate R&D to get out from middle income trap, because this is really nice. This is really nice, really nice slide to really providing the evidence, the importance of the R&D here. Yeah, so if you look at to this one in the bottom here, stage 1 Vietnam. So basically what I see here, which is really interesting, the countries who are sitting under stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 are basically, they are considered they are actually connected to the GDP per capita. So it means that actually the R&D capability and manufacturing capability, yeah, and innovations capability of the countries will impact directly to GDP per capita, or will impact directly to the wealth, yeah, of the population. That's why it is really important. So we need to just to drive the R&D, not because we are actually working in the scientific area, but at the end of the day, if it is really, if this if the products which are discovered are really having the better safety, efficacy, or whatever profile, then it will create, create additional value, where at the end of the day, it will provide the additional of wealthiness on the country. So you can see here. So maybe you can predict, yeah, where actually Indonesia is sitting. Yeah, but Malaysia is still sitting in the stage 2, and it is still in the middle income trap. Yeah, so the countries who are already get off from middle income trap is like Korea or Taiwan, where actually they have their own brand, and also they have mastering on the technology and able to produce high quality of products. For the countries who are actually having in the already in the stage 4, it means that actually the countries where actually they can set the trend of the globe. Yeah, so that you can see as well that actually in the pharmaceutical sector, the new product discovery always be coming from those three countries here, or region in the globe. Okay, moving on to the Indonesia. So we talk so much around the global. So right now it is time to talk around Indonesia. Okay, still Indonesia is considered still big country, and also having big potentials. Looking at 3 things from the pharmaceutical sectors. Number one is that around the number one is around the economy itself. The economy is big, the economy is growing. Yeah, and we predict that Indonesia is going to be number 4th largest economy in 2050. And right now, to be honest, I'm really proud as well that Indonesia is having the presidency in the G20. That's really amazing. Yeah, so then that's one thing. The second one is around stability. So Indonesia having one of the country, one of the country in the globe having stability on the economy, and also the security. Security is the basic requirement to grow the economy. So that's why it is proven, before pandemic. Yeah, so Indonesia is growing. Yeah, even we of course with it's growing with a decent economic growth, 5-6%, something like that. So we expect that by 2045, our GDP per capita is going to be 30,000 or more. Where actually, if we look at to this GDP per capita, it is more or less like the Korea or Taiwan by today. So that's why Indonesia is actually having the big potential to grow further. Then the last thing around the Indonesia, why Indonesia is still important country on the globe, to drive the pharma sector further, because Indonesia is having the gift from the God, which is a demographic bonus. So not a lot of the only few countries basically in the world are actually having the productive age of populations more than non-productive age. Yeah, so we will enjoy this productive age dominations until 2030, where actually we need to drive further. And our role here, as myself as a business leader, and also your role as as education institutions, to make it happen. How to make the productive age becoming super productive and can drive economy further. That's only happening in Indonesia right now. It is a time to really drive this forward. And the second one is around the commitment of the government to improve the health and education. No questions on that space. Yeah, Indonesia right now is the most is the country where actually having the most populous country to be covered in the health sector. More than right now, more than 200 million populations are covered by BPJS. That's amazing. And the people can get access when they are suffering any diseases. So that's really amazing. So that's actually something that we need to appreciate, and optimistic that Indonesia can grow further later on. But we need also to understand as well around what is happening now in Indonesia in the pharmaceutical sectors. So I will share with you some challenges, but we need to be optimistic because behind the challenges, there always be an opportunity. So I think the first that I need to tell you around this, around the pharma market. So I have mentioned earlier on that actually pharma market in Indonesia is around 80 trillion a year, basically. And it's quite often that we think that, whoa, because actually the OTC products are spread across Indonesia region, we can reach out easily, we can buy easily in Indomaret or Alfamaret all across the region in Indonesia. But again, yeah, if you look at the market here, the market still dominated by prescription medicines. 66% of the spending of the drugs, yeah, or revenue to the companies, from the drugs are actually generated by prescription medicines. Yeah, you can imagine the importance of the prescription medicines. And sometimes also we are thinking, yeah, because why not 222 million populations are covered by BPJS, they can go easily to the healthcare facility and also see the doctors, also get prescription, also get the drugs for free. But actually, if we look at the market itself, that's quite surprising, yeah. That actually the BPJS drug spend is minority than the private spend. And you can see that the BPJS drug spend only 20 trillion rupiahs a year. I got this data from Ministry of Health. So another fact that I would like to share with you, again, it is challenging situations, but again, it is also proof that actually there will be an opportunity behind it. So far, based on the data, historical data, the growth of AstraZeneca in terms of, the growth of Indonesia in terms of the pharma market are being low so far. Yeah, low mean basically it is, you can see here, this is actually the, this axis, basically this is the historic, yeah, last 5 years, it is, it grew by around maybe 3%, as I mentioned. And going forward, we predict that Indonesia is going to grow by maybe 5-6%. Yeah, it is considered low for Indonesia, and we can see the other markets, yeah, the other countries. And also you can see here that actually the bubble here is actually representing the size of the business in that country. So you can see here, Indonesia is quite small dot here in comparison to China. Yeah, China is huge. Yeah, so and also if you look at to the other countries, so Indonesia's size is right now it's more or less like Vietnam. Yeah, if you look at the bubble, yeah, just more or less. Yeah, Turkey is going really fast. Egypt is amazing. So I met with many Egyptians. Yeah, so that's really amazing in terms of how they drive this business forward and also how they spend in the pharmaceutical sectors. And actually I keep questioning myself, why Indonesia is so low, yeah, in terms of the growth. So then I checked to the data that actually right now Indonesia populations spending in the pharma sectors less than the other countries. So you can see here, even with Thailand, actually Thailand people spending 3 times of Indonesian people. Yeah, but of course we cannot compare it to the Indonesian, yeah, to Jakarta people. Yeah, actually they are more or less having same quality like the other countries. But if you look at to the other populations all across Indonesia, then we check to the spending per capita, then Indonesia is still low, very low in comparison to Thailand. So what spending we need to benchmark on is basically the developed country. So that's if we check to the Singapore, where actually we think that actually Singapore having better the medications, better healthcare facility and clinical outcome. So Singapore actually, actually they are maybe 7 times, yeah, maybe 6 or 7 times, bigger than Indonesia per capita in terms of the spending in the drug sector. So when we look at this, so what I see here is that, I'm optimistic, yeah. So with this kind of with this low spending, right now our market is 6 billion US dollar a year. If, for example, Indonesia, Indonesian population spending per capita is increased, like for example Thailand, where actually Thailand is not quite far away from Indonesia, yeah, then our market is going to be growing triple, yeah. So that's really amazing. So that we need to understand what the underlying issues behind it, and also we need to resolve. Of course, we cannot work together, but we need to do as a country to really resolve this together. So it's quite often, when we see around the business size, we think, that's because actually the Indonesia actually consumes or also take a lot of generic medicine which of low value. So actually, I just would like to share with all of you, basically from business perspective, the formula is quite easy. Product price times unit or volume, value times volume, and that's it. That's actually the how to calculate the business size. Yeah, so all of them are actually, and those two is basically those two elements are actually impacting to the business, yeah, pharma business here in Indonesia and also the other countries. Yeah, so it's quite often when we see that actually it's quite low business size in Indonesia, we thought that actually, this is because our Indonesian people are taking a lot of generic, yeah, which of low value, low price, but actually not. If you look at this one, even this data, actually I got this. Basically, I got this data. Is basically this data is also interesting. This data is basically representing the volume defined daily dose. Yeah. So in terms of the volume per capita, Indonesia also the lowest. Yeah. So in comparison to Bangladesh is still higher than Indonesia in terms of the consuming the drugs itself. You can see here Egypt, why the Egypt is increasing so high, because Egypt also taking drugs much more Indonesia. Yeah, so not to mention around the developed countries here, they're taking medicines a lot in comparison to the emerging countries here. So that's why the size of the business in Indonesia is quite low, but still Indonesia is still biggest in comparison to the other countries in ASEAN because of the number of population is big. So one of the hypotheses around why it is happening, because actually number one is around the challenge that we are facing is around the spending. Yeah, spending. If we look at this one, this is actually the spending in the healthcare sectors of both government and private. So Indonesia is considered the lowest here as well. In comparison, this is actually in comparison to the other countries. Yeah, and even we are below than the ASEAN in terms of the spending in the healthcare sectors. Yeah, some of the hypotheses why the spending and also the drug consumption is quite low. Maybe because of the ratio of physicians and also hospital beds per 1,000 populations is lowest as well in comparison to the other countries. Yeah, so you can see here actually we are actually competitive in terms of the ratio with Philippines. With Thailand, no. Thailand, they have huge, more, better ratio. In comparison to Vietnam, also they have also better ratio. Not to mention the developed countries like Australia. Yeah, that's actually another thought around why the pharma sectors is not in Indonesia is not growing really well because of this. But again, when we see when we make a decision, when we make the prediction that it is the low spending per capita in the drug sector are because of the infrastructure, then we need to have the optimism thinking. Yeah. So if the infrastructure is fixed, then the business is going to be growing as well. So this is also another hypothesis as well, why the products, the pharmaceutical sectors is not growing as what we expected, because of the wealthy people, the affordable people who can afford to seeking the the better medication abroad. They go abroad when they are getting sick. For the severe, when the people suffering the severe disease in particular, for example, like oncology, etc., and so on. So they should be able to spend, medications, including the drug in Indonesia, but they choose different options. They go abroad to seek the medication there. That's why, and if you look at the numbers here is huge. Yeah, 11.5 billion US dollar a year. Of maybe if I convert it into Indonesia, more than 150 trillion rupiahs a year. That's crazy. Yeah, just spend outside the country, because those people are seeking the better medications or better service in outside Indonesia region. So if we just make the rough assumptions that actually 20-30% of 150 trillion they are spent in, this is actually before pandemic, yeah, in Singapore and Malaysia. 20% of 20 to 30%, it equals to 30 trillion to 40 trillion rupiahs. Are actually, we have an opportunity, to grow the business, pharma business in Indonesia, and we're now getting lost because of this. Yeah, so that's actually another challenge, yeah, that we need to fix. Once it is fixed, then we can get the additional business of 30 to 40 trillion rupiahs a year. That's huge. Okay, so in the pharmaceutical sectors, also, among the industries and also among the countries are actually competing so hard to get the, to be able to grab the export opportunity. So the data, from the data that I have, basically the export opportunity, the export of the drugs are actually also really huge as well. Yeah, 8,700 trillion per year. That's actually the export spending every year. And you can see here that actually Singapore actually enjoying the export business much more than Indonesia, 10 times than Indonesia. Singapore export 93 trillion rupiahs a year. Or actually this is six times bigger than their own domestic market. Korea right now enjoying half of Singapore, 45 trillion rupiahs. Indonesia right now exporting the pharmaceutical products only 8.8 trillion rupiahs. Yeah, so we can imagine here. This the opportunity is 8,700 trillion rupiahs, and Indonesia can only export 8 trillion rupiahs. Yeah, so from optimistic thinking perspective, oh, my opportunity is huge. The question is, how can I compete with the other countries to grab more share from 8,700 trillion rupiahs? That's actually the questions that as a country we need to think and also act together. Okay, ecosystem R&D in Indonesia. So it's quite unfortunate as well that the ecosystem R&D ecosystem and also innovations ecosystem in Indonesia is not quite well developed in comparison to the global. Yeah, so that's also from the data that I got is basically the gross expenditure R&D is also still considered the lowest, yeah, among the other countries. The peers, the neighboring countries. Not to mention that the developed countries like Japan, they spend quite huge, very huge. And also this is also, another data that I got from the small portions of the R&D spending in Indonesia are actually dominated by the government. Yeah, if we just learn from what the other countries are doing, and also what the spending in the R&D sectors are looking like Japan and US, where actually they considered as an advanced country from the R&D and innovations perspective. Majority of spending are dominated by the industry because they are already reaching the stage where actually the R&D, the R&D and also result of R&D are commercial, are able to commercialize flawlessly. They can flow really smooth from the R&D and commercializations. That's why, because of these situations, then the then the private sectors are willing to spend more. Yeah, so you can see here that actually they spend more than the government. That's actually my hypothesis here. Okay, that's why that's actually the general innovations index of Indonesia. Moving on to the R&D competitiveness here in terms of the research and also innovations. So unfortunately, based on the data that I got from the BCI, Biopharmaceutical Competitiveness Index 2019, so Indonesia actually is grouped with Thailand and Vietnam. Quite unfortunate that actually we are considered as a losing out of investment. So from the 5 different dimensions: scientific capabilities, clinical research, regulatory system, market access, and also IP protections. Yeah, so you can see here basically the benchmark here is Singapore. Yeah, and actually we are here in comparison to Singapore. So a lot of homeworks that we need to do to really uplift ourselves as a country from the bottom, the position in the bottom, to move up. Yeah, when we are able to move up, then the investment will come, and the wealthiness of the country will come as well accordingly. Moving on, so the clinical trials, as I mentioned, why I just specifically mentioned clinical trials here, because clinical trials, what I mentioned in the beginning of my slide, clinical trials accounting for the biggest spend in the R&D spending, which is really huge. As I mentioned, actually the R&D spending in the pharmaceutical sector is the biggest among the other industries. Yeah, and it is important to really understand the importance of clinical trials, because clinical trials should be able to convert the molecules, should be able to convert the molecules where actually we find it in the laboratorium to the commercializations after the government approve it. So from industry point of view, from company point of view, what is important here? The clinical trials is not only the clinical trials for the sake, for the sake of the doing research, but clinical trials must be ending up with a dossier. Yeah, I will repeat. So clinical trials must be ending up with a dossier for 2 reasons. Number one, to discover, to provide the evidence that the new molecules that we discover is having better efficacy and safety than current standard of care. The second one, the intentions of clinical trials to provide the evidence that actually the current medicine that we are having actually able to be used for a bigger pool of the patients. Yeah, by doing so, then actually we can be having the products where actually this is commercially viable. But unfortunately, the situations in Indonesia, the clinical trials, where actually it is sponsored by the companies, where actually it is ending up with the dossier, and also it is ending up with registrations declining year on year, starting from 2010. Yeah, you can see here right now. Yeah, and in comparison to the other ASEAN region, Indonesia also not the best in terms of the numbers of the clinical trials in general. So that's quite unfortunate, but it is the opportunity to drive further into clinical trials, which ending up with a dossier. That's actually what the company expecting. Okay, so right now we are moving on to the investment climate and also product innovations. So I just collected the data myself, and also I just compare between those three countries. Singapore, as that's the three countries. Actually, the three countries were actually our neighboring countries, but it's quite far away from here. We can go to that country every time to benchmark ourselves with them. So Singapore representing the developed country, Indonesia is ourselves. Vietnam is basically the countries where from GDP per capita they are lower than us, but they are growing faster. So what we can learn from this, uh, from this space is that we can learn from those three countries where actually they are developing the innovations and R&D ecosystem so much. So the government is actually focusing on that space really, really seriously. They can attract the FDI, foreign direct investment, more than 50 times than Indonesia. Yeah, that's quite that's actually the good benchmark here. Why Indonesia having more populations, but Singapore is attracting much more investment than us? Yeah, that's questions that we need to answer. So also, quite often that we are thinking as well. Also, we can read in the media as well that actually Indonesia right now having much more dependency on the API, active pharmaceutical ingredients from the other countries. Yeah, we are trying to develop ourselves to acquire capability to produce the active pharmaceutical ingredient ourselves. But actually in Singapore, yeah, so a lot of companies, actually they are big companies, are competing by themselves to invest in Singapore in the API, active pharmaceutical ingredients. Yes, while actually Indonesia right now is trying to attract them, but Singapore having first. Why is that happen? So that's actually the questions that we need to, answer, and also becoming our homework to act on. Moving on. So why the R&D is really important? Why the developing and also uplifting the innovations and also R&D climate in the pharma sectors is really important. I got also collect the data as well. Yeah, I just I would like to take quite small country, which is Switzerland. That's really small country, yeah, in comparison to Indonesia. Yeah, in Switzerland also the numbers of the company is not as much as in Indonesia. They have two major companies. I don't want to mention the name, but actually you can see here. So in the pharma sectors, in the pharmaceutical industries, they export huge, 1,200 trillion a year export to the other countries. You can, maybe if you still remember the number, that actually Indonesia exporting only 8 trillion a year. So Switzerland, small country, exporting 1,200 trillion a year. That's really amazing. So that's why, in pharma sectors where actually the, R&D innovations and also ecosystem in pharma sector is built really well, then it can attract the investment. Also at the end of the day, it will also delivering the wealthiness as well to the country. So you can see here that in pharma sectors in Switzerland, they contribute more than 5% of the national GDP. That's amazing. Also in the US as well, we can see here that they contribute the 4% of the national GDP. Singapore, as I mentioned, that Singapore is actually quite benchmark for us. So in pharma sectors, they contribute 3% of the Singaporean GDP. So and why it is really huge. Basically, in pharma sectors, the contribution is coming from the R&D, active pharmaceutical ingredients, biologic, and also high value products that are produced in Singapore now. So I just I'm trying to find out the data around Indonesia, but this is what I got. Yeah, so in the pharma sectors right now, the sumbangan contributions in the pharma sectors to GDP is around 67 trillion. That's quite minor, in comparison to the other countries. So this is actually my last session. So hopefully that we have enough time to do the question and answer. Our role as a pharmaceutical society here is really crucial. Yeah, we learned a lot from the pandemic. So during the pandemic hitting us, I just took this, took the online media here and there. So maybe we still remember 3-4 months ago, a lot of people are infected by COVID-19. Some of them are in need to be having medical attention. Some of them are in need to be having, medication, specific medications to, to cure or to treat, yeah, the patients from the COVID-19 disease and also infections. But at the time, I saw that the Pak Budi, our Minister of Health, is trying so hard to provide the products, to provide the right treatment for the patients who are coming to the hospitals. Yeah, and some of the hospitals are really full. Yeah, and what government found out at that time is that, the countries who are suffering the same situations like Indonesia, they keep the pharmaceutical ingredients, pharmaceutical active ingredients for themselves. Of course, it is actually the part of the national resiliency. But the impact of Indonesia, we found difficulties to get the drugs, and that's why there are a lot of lot of concern from the government that actually we need to acquire new capability, which is biology and producing the API, that's the right decision. And the pharmaceutical, pharmacy society, and also pharmacists are responsible. That's actually what Pak Jokowi mentioned, in November 2020. Yeah, so this is actually the slide that I have also presented as well in the pharmacist associations, that from end-to-end perspective, this is actually the end-to-end that we need to understand around where we are up to with the end-to-end value chain, yeah, of the pharmaceutical sectors, from R&D, clinical trials, intermediate, API, formulation, manufacture, and distribution. So what I can, conclude here is that in the upstream area, so we are having some barriers that we need to resolve. From the downstream area, our growth is not quite maximum. So why is that happen? Yeah. So because of this, yeah, this is actually we can discuss further around this. This is my own opinion on it. So the R&D climate is R&D ecosystem, which is not competitive, and also the API and also ingredients still imported, majority of them. Then innovative medicine is not quite well developed here in Indonesia, and export, which is quite limited, yeah, and also because it is basically we are competing with the other countries as well. So it is a time. It is a time to develop R&D ecosystem in Indonesia to drive growth and also to make the patients, serve better. I took this slide as actually from white paper from Europe. So what the ecosystem means, ecosystem is much more complex than what normally we thought. So it is basically, the combinations or collective works from all stakeholders, including the government, education institutions, research center, pharmaceutical companies, CRO, whatever. So they need to work all together. Yeah, they need to work all together to make the products flowing from R&D to the commercialization. So we can see here, yeah, clinical trials, FDA, whatever. So venture capital also here as well, the academic research, pharmaceutical company, IP protection as well there. So pharmacist providers, etc., and so on. That's actually the ecosystem. We need to work together to really drive this forward. And this is the time to do it. And I'm also grateful as well, yeah, because we learned a lot, and actually Minister of Health coming up with the 6 pillars of the health transformations. And one of these pillars is basically transformations of the health resiliency system, where actually the pharmaceuticals R&D is part of it. I'm really happy that actually research and development is being mentioned, also prioritized in the Minister of Health agenda. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much to listen. Hopefully that we still have the energy to have a question and answer. So like Pak Sukarno said, beri aku 10 pemuda, maka aku guncang dunia. And this is time to really seek the work with the young people who are attending in this program, including the teachers and also including the stakeholders who are attending in this program. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Risman, for your insights. So I too learned a lot from this presentation, even though actually I watched this presentation before, like several parts of it already presented in a huge conference, right, Pak, in EAI, for example. So all of the stakeholders over here, students and then faculties, this is a really priceless information that you have from Pak Risman, because the same message has been disseminated not only to the general public, but also from leaders in pharmaceutical industry, leaders in government, including the ministry as well, right, Pak? And including the Kantor Kepresidenan, so if you know about it. So actually what Pak Risman do, even though he's working in a pharmaceutical company, but he really cares about the growth of Indonesian healthcare, the ecosystem, and how to drive this forward. So let's give our appreciation to him for his meaningful insights. So, Pa, actually in the chat, we already have lots of questions, Pa. So hopefully we still have time to discuss about this, because I too have several questions to you, Pa. But let's answer the questions in the chat first. So first of all, Pa, there's a question from Elizabeth Crestella. So, hi, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. You mentioned earlier that R&D willing to spend a lot of money for discovering new drugs, right? Because later on it will be paid off after it sells to the market. But not on every drug has huge selling point in the market, right, sir? So what happens if the drug is not succeed in the market, and despite giving a profit, the drug costs a big loss to the company? How the company deal with this condition? And what's the strategy of the company to prevent this?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for the questions. Yeah, so that's maybe I can give the quite general answer on it. So, you know that the one formula that we understand in the business sectors is that high risk, high gain. So always like that. Yeah. So right now the homework and also the actions or mitigation actions that we need to do is that how to mitigate the risk, how to reduce the risk so that the risk is acceptable. So that's why the key here is that around the how to connect between the R&D and also the commercialization also opportunity. Yeah, so that when we make a decisions, what molecules that we are going to be developed, before it is developed, we need to understand about the commercial opportunity. Yeah, so that's why, as I said before, that actually the research must be well connected to the business, and the business can advise what molecules are right now is really having the unmet medical needs and worthwhile to develop further. That's actually something that we need to continuously having discussion on.
Okay, hopefully that answer your question, Kaisa. So just reviewing a little bit what Pak Risman said. So because in pharmaceutical industry, the researchers are not working alone, right? So there are lots of departments there, And before they can decide that we want to develop a certain product, they will discuss together, and the business side will give insight to the researchers and give them insight what will kind of benefit lots of patients, right, Pak? And that
That's true. So maybe I just would like to elaborate more, maybe Alia, because this is actually the important question for the researcher and also for the educational institutions in particular. So before we start to develop the products, we need to understand about what disease area that we are looking at. So we of course we need to just to develop in the disease area where we think that it is still grow further. Yeah, we should not develop, because actually when we start developing the products, lot of cost that we need to spend in the area. So we need to really understand what is it still, what is the therapeutic area still growing. Yeah, that's first. The second one, also we need to understand exactly how many patients are benefiting from this product that we are developing. Number three, we need also to understand about which countries are actually having the access to these products. Number four, we need also to understand how to commercialize it. Yeah, so that's actually, it is about the development and commercializations must be linked all together.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak. So hopefully that clarify your question, Presa. So there are lots of considerations when a company want to develop a new product. So that's, I think it's also answer Evelyn's question, right? So we will just leave that first for now. And then the second question, Pak. Yes? Okay. So the second question from Lavisioni, Pak. So hello, sir. I want to ask a question. What are the ways that you recommend to be done to improve the growth of pharma market in Indonesia? For example, whether we should improve the BPJS spending or the private spending, Pak.
Okay, so I think the first, maybe I can answer about the 3 points. Number one, we need to improve our infrastructures, and we need to improve our healthcare professionals. As you can see in my earlier slide, that actually the gap still there. And actually, if you look at the ratio, we are still behind the other countries, the ratio itself. That's one thing. Then the second one, so BPJS or private, that's actually the channel of the market. Yeah. So the most important thing is that how can we encourage the people, yeah, who are actually getting benefit from the private sectors or BPJS sectors are actually getting the benefit so much from that treatment. Yeah, so that's actually more than enough. And also how the patients can get an access. So number two is actually about the access. How the patients and also the doctors who are treating the patients are able to access to the drugs they need. That's actually really basic here. So that's actually, if we do something like the basic things rightly, then the market will start growing. And number three, and also the last, is around the regulations. How the government and also the all stakeholders can agree and also can create the regulations environment, to open the competitions to benefit most for the patients, yeah, and also to benefit most for the business. So that's actually, we need to find the right balance there, so that if we just do 3 things, then the market is going to be growing as expected. That's my hypothesis.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Risman. So Lavisioni, the answer is first about the infrastructure and the healthcare professionals, and then the second one is about the access, because there's no point, right, if we have the product but then the patients cannot get the access to the necessary products. And then the third one is about the regulation, because it regulates the ecosystem, whether the patient later on can get the products and how the companies can provide their innovative medicines. So hopefully that answers your question. And the third question from Evelyn, I think it's similar with the previous one, so we will skip that for now. And then the next question from Shakila Angjaya, Pak. So good afternoon, sir. I have a question. I'm curious, what are the key steps that are done by other countries to break through the middle income trap? Thank you very much, Pak.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I think that's that's interesting question. So actually, myself also Alia working on it as well. Yeah. So we are trying also to understand about what the other countries are doing to really step up in terms of the getting off from the middle income traps. That's basically the quality of the products and also the quality of the innovations which are actually developed in that country. So to answer the question is that how we just then actually the questions coming to the how we can develop our R&D innovations, how we can develop the innovations ecosystem to be able to catch up and also to benchmark with the other countries who are having passed that journey. So because it is actually the journey. Yeah. So what we learn actually, we need to put the basic right first. Yeah, basic regulations, healthy ecosystem, open and also transparent competitions. Yeah, and also the access for what we have been, discovering. So that's why I just remember somebody told us whatever drugs, the best drugs that are ever been discovered by the company is nothing, meaningless if the drugs cannot access to the patients who needs it. Yeah, so that's actually my answer.
And just to add a little bit on that, right, Pa, we discussed about this a lot. So it's really tough questions to answer because every country has its own way to overcome this. But what we capture from the landscape of other countries, they kind of like trying to impose, for example, like South Korea, they're trying to open the competitiveness with other countries, and it will kind of like forcing the internal innovation to compete with other countries. So if they cannot compete, then they will die. So it's kind of like survive in the survival mode, but eventually they want to catch up and they want to win, right, by opening that. Okay, and then the next question from Wira. Dear sir, I would like to extend my thanks for this presentation, and I am to pose a question. Of the 4 stages of the capability in pharmaceutical R&D, where will Singapore and the China be placed into respectively?
Okay, can you repeat once again, Alia?
So of the 4 stages of the capability in pharmaceutical R&D, where will Singapore and China be placed into respectively, Pak?
For capabilities, that's actually innovations. Yeah, that's actually the innovations element. That's actually not capability. That's actually innovations element where actually the company are actually appreciating the most around the infrastructure, scientific infrastructure, access, regulatory, etc., and so on. So Singapore is actually the benchmark. If you remember that the Singapore is actually sitting on the top of the innovations ecosystem, where actually they almost have the perfect score in the 5 different elements that they are having, the clinical research capability and also IP protection, etc., and so on. So China, I don't have the data on China, but what I hear around China is always been positive. Yeah, they are not the best right now, not like US and also Europe or Japan, but they are growing really fast in terms of the scientific and also R&D ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, Pak. So hopefully it answers Wira Nata Spuntaran's question. So Pak, the next question is from Shakila again. So Shakila asking the second question. Hello, sir. I have another question. In Indonesia, the income of the prescribed drug is higher than from OTC. Is it a good condition or should it be the other way around? Maybe to answer that one first, Pak, because she has lots of questions in one chat.
Okay, that's it comes to the pricing strategy. Yeah. So that's actually my daily jobs as well. Yeah, but actually in terms of the pricing strategy, the basic principle around the pricing. Normally we don't compare pricing between generics and also OTC. Sorry, prescription and OTC. That's quite not fair comparison. The pricing should be based on the basic principles. Number one, the pricing should be accommodate, number one, the innovations. It is no way that the company do the pricing, but then the pricing is so low so that the company cannot invest in the investment space. No way. So it is impossible to survive, impossible to sustain. Yeah, that's one thing. And number one in terms of the pricing, number two in terms of the pricing. That's number one, pricing must be connected to the investment on innovations and R&D to be able to cover that. And number two, in terms of the pricing should be developed so that pricing, the product price still can be accessed by the patients. So if you look at how the patients accessing the products are actually, it's not always been from the out of pocket. Yeah, we just take the money from our pocket, also paying that. It's not as simple as that. So the payments can be made from the people itself, where actually it is considered as out of pocket. But actually there are also so many, some funding as well. For example, like the government payment, like the BPJS, and also the private insurance payment, yeah, like the private insurance which are exist right now, or the co-payment. Yeah, co-payment means that the out of pocket in combinations with the government. Yeah, or the donations, etc., and so on. Yeah, so that's actually the element of pricing. So once again, pricing is not about comparing prescriptions and the OTC. Pricing is about how pricing, number one, can support the innovations and R&D to sustain the company to grow. And also to sustain the patients can get better medications from time to time. Number two, pricing is about the access. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak, for your thorough answer. So Shakila, I think it answered your second question, your third question as well, because you asked about should the patent drug market has higher income than the generic one to improve the pharma market in Indonesia. But Pak Risman already said that pricing is not about comparing one to another, but mostly focus on the innovation. But since if we say that patent drug market usually innovative drugs, right, Pak, then the price should shift to the patent one, is it?
Maybe Alia and maybe the people who are attending here. So maybe we should not differentiate and also split between patent also not patent, because patent also having the time as well. When the time comes and the patent is coming off, then the patent products becoming generic products. Yeah, and why generic products also important element as well, yeah, to support the healthcare system. Yeah, but why? Because when the products becoming generic, then the generic company can produce more and also giving the benefits for the more populations. That's actually the basic principle. So we should not differentiate, oh, this patent is generic, because actually the patent product at the end of the day becoming generic as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak, for your answer. So let's proceed to the next question from Erika Crescencia. Good afternoon, sir. I'd like to ask a question. You mentioned that these days, the pharmaceutical developments are targeted more towards biologics. But even now, with the market still dominated by prescription medicine, Indonesian spending is still low. So maybe about affordability, Pak, ya? If
That's
in
right.
the future biologics dominate, but since the price is higher than usual drugs, will that just decrease the healthcare even more? So maybe about the affordability of biologics.
Yeah, so maybe we should not come into discussions around the reductions of the healthcare costs, because actually right now Indonesia is still in the bottom. Yeah, so we need to discuss around how to make the healthcare more efficient, how to make the drugs are efficiently being used by the patients. Yeah, so if the drug is really cheap, but it will not the benefiting the patients most, then I don't think that we can say that, you know, this is the efficient medicines. It is cheap medications, yes, but it is not efficient medications because it is not giving the maximum benefit for the patient who needs it. So something that we need to, that's why right now the terminology of the cost, moving to the cost effectiveness. Yeah, not the cost reduction. So cost reduction is something a bit dangerous to discuss, because if we just reduce the cost, you know, if we just reduce the cost for the sake for the cost itself, then the benefits will, you know, then the patients becoming the victim. Patients must be center of the everything we do. Yeah, so that whatever we are doing, it is for the patients.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak, for the answer. So let's consider the pharmacoeconomic course, yeah, about the cost effectiveness studies to evaluate about drugs. And it's not about the reduction of the cost, but more to compare whether the cost is effective to give the most benefit for the patient. Okay, so let's continue to the next question from Gregorius Enrico. So afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question regarding the Indonesia low production of new drug than any other country. Can pharmaceutical industries in Indonesia just follow the step of other country to collaborate with them, Pak?
Yeah. So maybe we need to move, you know, we need to move the terminology, also discussions in pharma sectors around productions. Yeah, so maybe we need to think really hard about the investments in the R&D. Yeah, because if we look at from the production's cost point of view, yeah, production cost point of view, the productions is not the majority of the investments on the pharmaceutical sectors. Yeah, right now the investment is basically light in the R&D, and R&D will be R&D and innovations will provide much bigger impact to the society, to the patients, and at the end of the day, to the countries. Yeah, so that's actually something that we can focusing on, and it is basically, you know, achievable. So in terms of the productions, because if you look at, as I said earlier, that actually right now the pharmaceutical sectors, yeah, multinational company in particular, they are trying to discover the new medicines in the rare disease, where actually the patient is really niche, the patient is really small, yeah, but the value of medicine is really high. Why? Because actually to cover the R&D costs. Yeah, that's actually the reason why. And that's why, and actually because the patient is really small, the volume is not so huge. So in terms of the manufacturing, they don't need more. So they need only one manufacturing sites globally, and that's it. Yeah. So that's actually, that's why we need to move, you know, our thinking from manufacturing to the R&D and R&D and innovations. Of course, we need to continue building ourselves in terms of the country capability in manufacturing, from the, you know, conventional technology like tablet or syrups, and also moving on to the injections, moving on again to the biologic manufacturing, moving on to the more complex manufacturing, you know, more complex manufacturing technology. Yeah, but we need to start thinking around the investment in the innovations and also R&D, because it will bring bigger impact, yeah, than the manufacturing itself.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak, for your answer. So Orlando, hopefully this answer your question. So let's continue to the next. We still have some more. Are you okay with it, Pak?
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, lots of interesting questions. And the next one is from Kenjiro Tanoto, but I think this is pretty similar with the first and the third one, Pak. So it's about the inspiration on searching and discovering new molecules or drugs. Maybe you can elaborate more, Pak, so how you can inspire to search and discover new molecules and drugs, Pak.
I think first, you know, that's based on my own thinking. It is nothing to do with the journal, nothing to do with the textbook that we already know in pharmaceuticals. Yeah. So I think to me, what I feel is that the discovering the new medicines, new molecules, it is of course we need to have the very strong science, yeah, science background, also science capability in that country. But other than that, actually it is the national skill. It is the skill. Well, actually, yeah, it is more or less similar like we ride the bicycle. It is also skill. Normally skill cannot be learned, you know, in one day. Cannot. Skill is something that we need to continuously practicing. Yeah, and as I mentioned in my slide, actually discovering new drugs, it is not about the laboratorium, yeah, researcher in laboratorium working. Then after we have a new molecules, we just hand over to the pharmaceutical company and that's it. No, not like that. That's it much more complex than that. So we need to, the researcher need to be having close collaborations with the industry around new molecules that they need to develop to have the commercial viability. And number two, we need also to understand as well around the patent. Number three, around the clinical trials and also patients. Number four, regulation, a lot of things. Yeah. So my suggestion here is that from the all value chains in the pharmaceutical sectors, R&D, API, whatever, we need to focus in one thing, make the good in the few things rather than we are to try and fix anything. So one thing that I'm thinking of is around the clinical trials. Because actually in Indonesia, before 2010, yeah, actually Indonesia was the destinations from the global multi-center clinical trials. But right now, not anymore. Yeah. In other hand, clinical trials actually is the important steps, yeah, to discover the new medicines. If, for example, you discover something which is a little bit promising, just put in the clinical trials engine, then we will understand the result, whether or not that it is working or not. Yeah, so if the clinical trials is not working, once we get the new molecules, we will be confused. Yeah, what should I do with these molecules? Yeah, so we need to develop something. We need to just accelerate few things, but we need to execute it well. And my thinking right now is that clinical trials.
Okay, very interesting, Pak, regarding clinical trial. So the next question, I will jump to Sanji's question first because this is about clinical trial. So just connect it with what Parisman said. So Sanji, thank you for your in-depth presentation, Mr. Risman. I have a few questions. What can the government do to make Indonesia into a more attractive place for sponsors to conduct clinical trials? So this is related to what you said before, Pak.
At least three things, yeah. So this is the power of three. Three things. Number one, what government get, because government is actually the the decision makers and also regulators. The government need to revisit also to understand about what the regulations which in need to be simplified, which in need to be revisited, which in need to develop to just make the clinical trials, global multi-center clinical trials more accessible and more efficient in Indonesia. That's one thing. Yeah. The second one also about the infrastructure and also capability, because you know that in the in one of the slides that I have shared with all of you, basically the clinical trials in Indonesia, the capability is quite low in comparison to the benchmark country, which is Singapore. Yeah, so we need to work all together. So the CRO, the doctors, and also the healthcare professionals, including pharmacists as well in the hospitals management, etc., and so on, in the hospital level, how to make clinical trials more efficient and accessible. So that's actually about the capability. That's actually number two. Yeah. Number three, yeah, in terms of the clinical trials, how to make clinical trials can be driven forward is that about the simplifications, efficiency. So in Malaysia, so I'm following the Facebook in Malaysia clinical trials. They actually continuously working on the how to make it simplified in terms of the in terms of the protocols, review, approval, etc., and so on. They make something like the one gate, but not sure what is happening there, but actually how to make it efficient in terms of the clinical trials, so that clinical trials can be start off timely, can be end timely as well. So that's actually the important, because global multi-center clinical trials require high quality clinical trials and also timely manners.
Okay, thank you very much. So Sanji, for your first question, so the answers are three. So basically the first one is about the regulations. So government need to re-review their regulations to make it more conducive for the ecosystem for clinical trial. And then the second one is about capability and infrastructure, ya Pak ya. And then the third one is about simplification, because if it's too complicated, then no one wants to conduct their clinical trials in Indonesia. And Pak Sanji still have two other questions. So it's okay, right, Pak?
It's okay, it's okay.
Okay. So the second one is, could you share your insights on how clinical trial implementation in Indonesia has changed as a result of the pandemic, Pak?
It is. Yeah, it is. So basically, before pandemic, when I mentioned clinical trials, nobody cared, nobody knows. But when the pandemic hit us, and also clinical trials of the COVID-19 vaccine start to be conducted in Bandung. So everybody right now talking about clinical trials. That's really amazing. Yeah. So when we discuss, to the layman right now, when I discuss around clinical trials, they start to connect. Is that clinical trial phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3? They even know. There are 3 phases of clinical trials, and they have more questions. What is the efficacy looking like? Oh, that's amazing. That's actually the primary outcome of the clinical trials. So that's really amazing. I think it should be started with the public awareness, or the government awareness, or decision maker awareness on how important clinical trial is. And it is happening now. Then if you just check to the clinicaltrials.gov, so in the past years, Indonesia clinical trials contribution there, the numbers is quite low. And because of the pandemic, you can check, maybe some of clinical trials has been started. It means that actually it is moving. But again, Indonesia need to accelerate. That's my answer.
Okay, so even though pandemic has changed our lives significantly, like there are lots of difficulties because of the pandemic, but one of the positive things that appear is that now the government and all the people are caring more to the clinical trial. So hopefully this will accelerate the pharmaceutical and healthcare sector in general, ya Pak ya, for Indonesia. Sure. And just to give a comment a little bit on that, so back in 2019 or 2018, Pak Risman and the team already advocated to the government about clinical trials, and they seemed very, very hesitant right back at first. And then suddenly the pandemic hits, and then everyone like aware about so this is what they talked about for years, right?
That's true.
So that's very, very interesting. So the third question, Pak, from Sanji. So Pak, what regulatory policies can Indonesia adopt to better adapt to the rapid changes in COVID research? What do you think, Pak?
In COVID what?
COVID research, Pak.
Oh, COVID
the
research.
Regulatory policies.
Okay, so COVID disease basically, of course, I'm still do empathy to the COVID-19 patients and also the family who lost their family members. But COVID-19 disease, I think from pharmaceutical point of view, it's not different to the others. The difference is that how we can run really fast. We can discover the vaccine really fast and produce that really fast for the global needs. That's actually the difference. But the steps is same, the requirement is same, the clinical trials methodology is same, primary outcome, secondary outcomes, whatever we are doing is same. So basically, pandemic or non-pandemic, basically the government and also the others, the other stakeholders in the pharmaceutical sector must be working together to accelerate the innovations. Yeah, so once the government, and we need to act based on our capability. The government actions in the regulations, and academics actions on the connections to the business and also doing research, and also of course producing the more capable student. Yeah, and the company like us have to accelerate the new drugs, have to accelerate the new vaccine. For example, if for example a new variants coming, for example, we need to act on it. So all of us need to work together. And so far, what I learned is that in the government sectors, they are working really fast. BPOM is prioritizing the pandemic drugs. You know that in the COVID-19, not only vaccines, but there are also some molecules where actually they are having the expanded indications or new molecules as well, intended or indicated for COVID-19 that has been accelerated by BPOM. So what I see right now is that it is not about only the regulations, but also the behavior of the all stakeholders to accelerate the innovations, to accelerate the access of the drugs to the patients who need it.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak, for your thorough answer. So hopefully it answers Sanji's question. So Sanji has 3 questions and we already covered all of that. So let's continue. I think there are 2 more people, yeah, Pak. We need to answer 2 more. So the next one is from Giovanni Batista. Pak, afternoon, sir. I'd like to ask about your opinion regarding the low attractiveness of business sector for the R&D of a drug. The data showed that the funding of R&D in Indonesia mostly comes from the government, right, Pak? I'm curious, why is this happening in Indonesia? What do you think make investors not interested in investing in R&D field of drug in Indonesia, Pak?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So why actually there are, if you just make it simplified answer, yeah. So actually there are 2 funding sources, yeah, of the research and development. Maybe you know better than me, but that's actually from practical point of view, there are two sectors. One is the government, second one is the private. So right now the government is spending the most and the private is spending less. Why does that happen? Maybe that's actually the 2 things. Number 1, because of the government spend a lot, which I don't think it is a case. And number 2, the industry is less willingness to spend in the R&D in Indonesia. Why is that happen? The industry or the companies always think, they to make their business sustainable, of course, they're concerned around the P&L, profit and loss, and also commercialization as well. Whether or not the products, the spending that they have been making is feasible on return of investment. That's actually one that the industry always thinking of. So if they think that the investment in that space is not viable, is not able to have the good return on investment, then if the company continue investing in that space, then the company becoming not sustainable. It means that the company may be stopped somewhere at certain point of time. Yeah. So that how to make it happen, how to make it happen, the investment for the pharmaceutical company. Maybe there are 2 or 3 things. The first one is around the market itself. How we can develop the market so that the market is basically the attractive enough for the company to do the investment in the research and development, because investment in research and development is long-term investment. Yeah, it cannot be just return of investment will be very long. Yeah, that's why what company point of view is that we need stability, we need also accuracy as well on the return of investment. Yeah, and also certainty as well. Yeah, that's one thing. The second one, in terms of the attractiveness of the investment in the R&D, of course, around the capability infrastructure, the ability and also capability of researcher, etc., and so on to deliver, yeah, meaningful research, yeah, for the company to grow. Yeah, so that's actually coming back to the return of investment. Yeah, that's actually my answer. Maybe number 3 is around the regulations. Yeah, how we can create the regulation who are really supportive. Yeah, really supportive to drive the innovation, also research and development. I just give you one example. Yeah, so I just discussed with my friend who are researcher, and they mentioned that actually when they import, yeah, they import something like a certain reagent or certain biologic products for research in Indonesia. And actually it is being held by the custom, because the custom doesn't know what is that for, yeah, what is the license, etc., and so on. Then it took really long. Then the biologic or the research material is becoming expired. Yeah. So then how we can make all stakeholders are really supportive to the research and development. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Pak Risman. So Giovanni, the answer are 3. So first of all is, of course, about the market itself. So if it's very, very potential and it will kind of give hope for the company to have return of investment, then it should be attractive enough. And then about the capability and infrastructure. So this is how we as an educational institution, we can kind of like driving this as well to produce more capable graduates. And also the third one is always back to the regulation, because it regulates everything, right, Pak? So how conducive the ecosystem is. Okay, so Pak, the next question is from Owen. So good afternoon, sir. I would like to ask your opinion on whether lack of investment to pharma industry in Indonesia is due to low trust. Oh, so I think this is already answered, yeah, Owen, yeah. But maybe is it about the low trust, Pak?
Low trust. What does low trust mean?
Low trust of other countries towards Indonesia pharma market, Pak. So
no, that's not the case. That's not the case. So I've given the answer. Yeah. The market is one, regulations, and also the capability, either the infrastructure or the people capability. Yeah. And also, of course, yeah, market is the return of investment.
Okay, so it's not about the loss of trust, right? So especially because Indonesia is a really huge country with large market, right? As Pak Risman said before. So we just need to push it with the capabilities and then the regulation, because the market itself is already large and we have lots of potential in there. Okay, so Pak, the last question, hopefully before we close, from Carlos. Good afternoon, sir. I would like to ask a question. As we know, Indonesia is pushing to discover new drug molecules. However, we are still importing majority of the API from other countries for our productions. I would like to know how can our pharma sector improve if we are discovering new drug molecule rather than reducing import of API for our production. So this is about the importation of API, Pak.
Okay, that's actually the person who's asked questions actually asking the 2 different things. Number 1 is around discovering the new molecules. Number 2 is the API productions. That's actually the 2 completely different things. Yeah, so in terms of the API productions, maybe I just would like to give you something at the highlight that in Indonesia right now, there are around 1,000 molecules approved by BPOM and having marketing authorizations. 1,000 molecules. Yeah, so not to mention around the brand name. Yeah, so the brand name with strength, etc., and so on, maybe more than 16,000. Yeah, so I don't think that Indonesia will pursue to produce 1,000 molecule in Indonesia. I don't think that it is possible. Yeah, something that we need to do is that in terms of the API productions, at least we need to understand, and also at least we need to acquire the capability how to, how to produce, how to develop the API productions, yeah, efficiently. Efficiency is also the key. Yeah, so it is, we should not just, okay, I want to just produce API and the price is 10 times higher, yeah, than the current API. Then it becoming the inefficient products, yeah, becoming the burden, yeah, for the society, for the taxpayers, and also for the government. So we need to acquire the capability, how to improve, how to increase productivity, increase the efficiency of the of the API productions in Indonesia. That's actually something that we need to acquire. And new products, new chemical entity, that's a different topic to discuss. Yeah, new chemical entity is having long journey. Yeah, if you look at the value chain that I just mentioned, starting from screening, preclinics, clinics, and also the scale up, commercializations, and also regulatory, post-market surveillance, and that's really long. So that's different. So actually, what I'm trying to say here is that it is the matter of prioritizations. Yeah, it is the matter of prioritizations. We cannot do everything at once. We need to focus on few things, but we need to execute the best. That's actually my advice.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak, for the answer. So it's actually two different things, Carlos. So hopefully that answer your question. So that is the last question, Pak, from our attendees. So there are lots of questions involved. And thank you very much, Pak Risman, for sharing. It's a really priceless information because this same message was disseminated into other leaders in Indonesia. So you in I3L are very privileged to have Pak Risman today in this Power Talk. And Pak, before we close this meeting, I would like to hear from you, Pak, a closing statement. So you said before that we need the triple helix approach, right, Pak? The government cannot stand alone, the pharmaceutical industry cannot stand alone, and therefore the academia cannot stand alone as well. So we need to collaborate together to improve the healthcare system, especially regarding the pharmaceutical sector. So because we are from an educational institute, Pak, do you have a last comment and hopes or message for us, Pak, how we can maximize or optimize our role in improving Indonesian healthcare system and pharmaceutical industry in general, Pak?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. That's actually the important question. So your role is really critical. As an educational institutions, your role is really critical. So maybe you don't realize how appreciated we are to the educational institutions. We put the educational institution really in the really high positions. So UR is the best place to voice out the truth, to educate us, to educate government, to educate the company, to educate the society, to educate everyone around the truth, and also how to make Indonesia better. Continue to speak up. Yeah, engage the industry, engage the government, engage whoever. Yeah, to make Indonesia better. Yeah, and you are the glue of the Indonesia to drive Indonesia forward.
Okay, so we have really huge role, everyone, to move this forward for better Indonesia healthcare system. So thank you very much, Parisman, for your time and availability and willingness to share your insight. And for everyone, for all the attendees, thank you for joining this Power Talk event. And before we end this event, please kindly fill the evaluation form in the chat so you can click on the link. And then we will evaluate, we will collect your feedback, and this will be our improvement for the next Power Talk. So you can also use this QR code in the slide. You can just take a picture using your phones, and please fill the evaluation form. Okay, that's it for today. So thank you very much, everyone, especially for Parisman, and have a great day, everyone.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Mari, selamat sore.
Thank you, Pak.